Hey yo, what's going on YouTube? I hope you guys are having a good day so far. So the video you guys are about to watch is a tip video that I have prepared for you, for some of you who don't really get the most wins in Fortnite, and kind of want to learn how you might be able to squeeze a few more wins into your game. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. The gameplay in the background is a duo game that me and my brother had the other day that was pretty cool. We had, I think, 19 kills and the last guy killed himself, so I hope you guys enjoy that. Alright, so let's get right into this video. So when I'm picking a landing spot, the two things that I'm thinking about is where's the good loot and where are the easy rotations coming from. So some of the places that I think of right away that have good loot and easy rotations are places like Pleasant Park, Retail Row, Salty Springs, and Tilted Towers. Obviously, those are some relatively high populated areas which some of the newer players aren't going to want to go. So a couple of places that I would definitely recommend for the newer, not quite as good players are places like Lucky Landing and Happy Hamlet. The reason that I say that is because both these places have very good loot, but also don't have a lot of people coming there because of the fact that they are out of the way a little bit. So that way you won't have as much, beginning game action and will probably have a better chance at making it to those mid to end games. Some places that I would recommend for medium skill players is places like Snobby Shores, Fatal Field, Sunny Steps, Polar Peak, and Frosty Flights. The reason that I say that is because there is typically some more people there, but also the loot there, in my opinion, is significantly better than places, like Junk Junction, Lonely Lodge, Haunted Hills, places like that. And then lastly, the places that I would recommend landing if you're a pretty good player and want to go for those high kill games are places like Pleasant, Tilted, Paradise, Lazy, Retail, and Salty. And a lot of the times, the newer players think that Salty is one of the good places to go for them because if you look at it on the map, it looks like this tiny little town that probably not a lot of people are going to land at. But if you jump into Fortnite right now, I guarantee you'll have at least 6 to 7 people land at Salty with you, and it's going to be crazy. There's going to be some decent players in there. You're going to see probably 2 or 3 soccer skins that are going to build, a goddamn city on your ass, and it's going to be tough. But anyways, that's what I would suggest doing for beginning game. Alrighty, so let's say that you just landed at Retail Row, you got out of there alive with 3 kills, and you think that you are pretty good, but you're getting pushed out over to, let's say, the Dusty Divot or even as far as Loot Lake. My number one piece of advice in this situation would be to avoid going right through the Dusty Divot area because of the fact that there's so much open area and you can get shot from so many different directions. What I would do instead is I would rotate up and over around towards the top of the divot over by where Tomato Temple used to be, which would now be kind of like the lava area. Because of the fact that there are the volcano, we call them water geysers. I don't know what the actual term for them is, but me and all my buddies call them water geysers that you can hit. And that way you could rotate over into zone. And that's a little bit of movement that you could have. I would highly avoid using vehicles if you don't want to be in a fight and if you're, trying to squeeze into endgame because you don't want to get into a lot of mid-game fights because of the fact that they cause so much noise. It's so loud and it's going to attract players from all over the place like, those good players who are trying to get the high kill games. All right, let's take a look at a different scenario. Let's say that you dropped at Lucky Landing and you have to rotate up and over towards kind of Paradise Palms and in that desert area. My suggestion to you in this situation would be to honestly use the storm to your advantage a little bit and try to squeeze to the thin side of the storm because if that's the only way that you have to rotate, that it's just going to be a sliver of storm that you kind of have to outrun. So what I would do is I would wait until the storm is right on your butt and then kind of ride the storm in to make sure that you aren't going to get pushed from behind so that you can see any and all enemies coming at you from the front side. So those were a few tips that I have for rotating in Fortnite. My last tip for kind of the beginner players is to really use height to your advantage if you aren't a really good builder. So an instance that this could really help you in is say that you we can go off the last scenario. Say you got over to Paradise and you have that high ground that's right north of Paradise. What I would do is I would build up to that and I would build, a 1x1 2 layers high and I would sit in it. If you aren't a good builder and aren't confident in your ability to build battle somebody, take that immediate high ground so you have the advantage from the start and make them work for it. If you have the high ground, a lot of the times without at least a launch pad or a rift, it's going to be hard to push up that, especially if you have at least decent aim and can suppress fire on them while they're coming up. Alrighty, so those were kind of my tips for some of the beginning players. At this point, if you're a really experienced player, these tips really probably aren't going to apply to you all that much. But these are kind of for the more, mid-tier players who try to play sort of aggressive, but also like to, get their fair share of wins. So this tip's going to be to really, analyze and pick your fights. If you're running and you see a guy who's absolutely pushing everybody and he's just, in a big build fight and you can see that he's an incredible builder and you think that he's probably going to outplay you, you're probably going to want to not push him, especially if you're going to push him by yourself. You're going to want to be that third partier in that fight, and you're going to want to apply the pressure on him when he has his kind of, back to the wall. Also, in that same scenario, though, is that you don't need to be afraid to back out of a fight when you're being third partied. Say you're that guy who somebody's like, oh man, this guy's better than me, I better wait, and then he sees you get into a fight, so he comes and third parties it. If you're in a bad situation where you don't think you're going to come out alive, it's never a bad idea to try to let the other two people in that fight battle it out while you either camp or you just get out of the area. A lot of the times, more times than I can count, I'll get third partied and I'll edit down into my base, I'll place a launch pad and I'll just get the hell out of there and let those guys fight it out and, take care of them later in the game when they're not trying to third party me. Also, rather than just getting out of there entirely, a lot of the times I'll wait until their fight ends and then I'll clean up the fight just so I get that, 50 health and those materials that they drop now because that is so valuable. Alrighty, so those are my tips for mid-game. Now moving on to endgame, my number one tip, especially for newer players, is to find that high ground and camp. You want to get up into where you think is going to be the best position on the map, where you're going to have high ground on everybody else, and you're going to want to build a one by one, and you're going to want to sit there until somebody pushes you. You don't need to be aggressive by any means. You can sit in there and you can try and wait until it's you and one other player. You don't want to peek your head because you don't want to get sniped, and like I said, find that high ground and stay there, especially if you're a newer player. With that being said, if you're a little bit more of an experienced player, yet you're still trying to clutch those wins, sometimes I wouldn't advise going for the high ground right away because that is going to be a relatively contested area sometimes. A lot of the times what I've been doing lately is I've been waiting until I see two guys fighting on the high ground already, and then I'll push that at endgame. And I'm talking, 5 to 6 people left endgame, like not, 15, 20 people. I'm saying, last few guys. You want to wait until the better players are up there fighting, and then you want to go try to take out that better player in the map and get him out of the game. But at the same time, you don't know how many times lately in endgame I've gotten sniped. So watch, be aware of who has snipers and where they're out on the map. Keep those audio cues, in the back of your head and kind of know what's going on around you. Alrighty, and then the very last tip that I have for you guys in this video is to keep your composure, especially when it's a 1v1 or 1v2. Absolutely do your best to stay calm. It's no different than any other fight in the entire match, yet I find myself getting so nervous so many times when it's endgame. So do your best to, keep your composure and think of it as any other fight in the game while, like I say, maintain that high ground. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, but I'm out. Peace!